This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 298, Solving and Sharing with Matthieu Scarset. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're chatting with Matthieu about two modules he created to solve common Drupal problems. And today joining me, as I mentioned, is Matthieu Scarset. He's been on Drupal.org for over 4 years, working on a number of contributions and modules. He's a self-taught developer and was first introduced to web development using WordPress back in 2010. While he was living in the Balearic Islands in Spain, he worked as a junior project manager in the hospital. Also been having guest hosts starting this year. Fatima will be back in about a month to finish out her 4-week tour. She split it up between 2 months. And we'd like to welcome back Jason Pimentel. It's been a while. Glad to have you back.
It is. Thanks.
In the meantime, Jason has continued building and designing websites. He's been doing that since 1994. And if you are regular listeners of the show, you know he's been specializing in web typography for the past 10 years. He's one of the leading experts in using variable fonts, and he consults with nearly every major type and web browser company. He's an invited expert to the Web Fonts Working Group at the W3C, and he's led the design of typographic systems used by millions of people every day for entertainment and government platforms. Over the past several years, he's published countless articles, newsletters, and sites focused on teaching web typography, exploring the design and technical capabilities of variable fonts. He has delivered talks and workshops on the subject at over 100 events and conferences around the world. Yeah, Jason, you're definitely the most prolific, I think, of the Talking Drupal hosts and former hosts.
I feel like I should have edited a lot more.
to add to it or to remove from it?
The only way that I could stop you from making fun of me, John, is to basically remove everything.
That's not true. I don't think we mentioned your book in there, so there's that.
Well, now we have.
There we go. Aha.
And joining us this week, as usual, Stephen Cross with Parallax Info Technology. What's new with you this week?
First off, I don't feel worthy to be on this panel today, to be honest with you. We've got Matthieu and Jason who have achieved far more than I have in the Drupal world. So thank you for joining us. Hey, I've had this problem. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the show, but I've been having a lot of pain in my shoulder, particularly my right shoulder, over the past 6 months. And one of the things that I've discovered is that using the keyboard, which your hands are together and you kind of roll your shoulders in, is after 30 years in front of a keyboard is part of that problem. So I've recently moved to an ergonomic keyboard. And I've only had it for about 4 days now. Yeah. So it's like one of those things where basically the keyboard's split in half and they're connected with a wire. So you basically have your arms at their proper position, not kind of rolled in the two sections of the keyboard or however far apart you need them to be. And I've had it maybe for 5 days now. So my typing went from poor words per minute, or was it poor words per minute, down to extremely poor words per minute.
I was going to ask.
It's terrible. You don't realize how bad your typing was and the habits that you've created until you split those keys and separate them by 1.5 feet. But I can tell you this, it's way more comfortable to sit for 8 or 12 hours a day with your hands 1 foot or 2 feet apart than they are kind of with your shoulders kind of crunched in on a single keyboard. So I'm hoping, from all the reading I've done, it's probably going to take me a month or so to get used to this. But I'm willing to do it for the pain that I've had over the past 6 months. So the keyboard's called Moonlander. I don't know if I mentioned that. And there will be a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. It's an expensive hardware purchase.
Yeah.
And I looked at them for quite a while, but it looks like the thing I needed to do to at least get through the next 20 years.
I've been looking at that for probably 6 months to a year. You're not kidding when you say it's a little bit pricey, but I was kind of thinking the same thing. I don't have pain in my shoulders, but I'm like, I'm definitely going to be a developer for the next 30 years. So it might be a worthwhile investment, but I'll be very interested to hear how it works over the next couple of weeks and see if it's worth it.
I'm looking at this website now and listening to you, I'm just imagining like the mental load to try to figure out how to type with two different hands. Like,
you don't type with two different hands?
No, but like,
do you touch type? Are you a hen like hunt and peck?
No. But I feel like the keyboard's the keyboard, right? It's together, and you're used to that configuration. Now to like try to split that out, like I feel like your brain's gonna have to. So it's learn that a little bit.
So it's a little more than that too. I've stuck with the regular QWERTY keyboard layout, but it's not just that the keys are split; they're also in slightly different positions. Right. So it's better for you because your fingers are now just moving forward and backward. They're not going sideways any longer. Really?
I was gonna say, like, if you're a touch typer, normally that's still not gonna.
Yeah. So with like, if you look at the keys, they're lined up straight. So when you're going through the keys, you're going back and forward, which is better for you than kind of twisting left and right a bit. And there are better layouts that you can install on a keyboard like this. But I cannot go away from the QWERTY layout. I don't think my mind could handle that. So
this website's also interesting too, because not only are they messing with your head by splitting the keyboard, but the images on the website shake a little bit as you're going through the website, which gives you this like unsettled feeling. So it's like, I'm unsettling you because I'm splitting your keyboard, and now I'm unsettling you because the images are moving a little bit.
So the interesting transition thing is for the past 4 days, I have two keyboards plugged in. I have my old one in front of me, and I actually split the one to the side to get it out of the way, because when I need to do something important and quick, like type in the show notes during the show, there's no way I could do it fast enough on the split keyboard. So I'm kind of using both and cheating at the time being. But
it's just going to take longer and longer for you to get used to the new one.
I need to cut the cord. I agree. I haven't gotten the opportunity to do that.
Literally,
yet.
Just do it right now. Take a pair of scissors and do it right on the show. We'll
not happening. You. No, sorry, not happening.
I'm wondering if the typos are going to go down, or if the typos will stay. If your typo rate is going to stay the same.
This is way too long on this topic.
Okay. Also, also joining us as usual, John Picozzi. What's new with you?
So I couldn't come up with anything new with me. So I'm actually going to talk about our 300th episode real quick. We are fastly approaching our 300th episode, and we would like listeners to contribute to that. So being an open source podcast and all, if you have a message that you would like to send us about our 300th episode, or you have a favorite topic you'd like to tell us about, if you could send a 1 or 2 minute clip to us at Talking Drupal. The contact info will be at the end of the show. We'll try to include that in our 300th show. So that's my update. That's what's new with me.
And to be clear, it doesn't have to be 1 to 2 minutes. It can be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, whatever you feel like.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of a long time to say something. So just as long as that, you're not like sending us like a 5-minute clip and expecting us to put it in the show. Something smaller.
I guess it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
Well, that's true too.
Okay.
So for me this week, as I mentioned, I'm Nick. I'd been a pretty quiet week, although this was kind of my first real week being fully vaccinated. So we went and saw some friends for the first time in almost a year and a half. It was really nice. It was kind of bizarre. It was really a lot of, you've kind of built up these mental muscles of like, keeping super far from people. And, the first hug with some friends was, it was nice, but it was definitely weird. There was some internal screaming, but it was good. It was good to finally get out. Some friends had bought a new house and we hadn't had a chance to get out and see it. So being able to kind of do something normal and get the house tour was definitely nice.
I went to a movie theater last week. Haven't done that in forever. And that was like our regular thing for Eric and I, just go to the movies once a week. We haven't done it in so long. And
you rented out a movie theater for just you and Erica?
No, we didn't. We both went, and she kind of went a little bit kicking and screaming, but I'm like, we're vaccinated. We're good. Let's go. And I convinced her, and we actually went to a theater. It was a weird experience, but it was nice to be back to doing something what I would consider normal life.
Yeah, we haven't ventured there yet. We've been to a couple of restaurants and sat inside at a restaurant with friends. That was just that whole thing was so awesome and so weird.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not ready for either of those experiences yet.
It will take you it took me I think we were already vaccinated and completed for 6 weeks. So it's going to take a while, but you'll get there.
So that other voice that you heard joining us again, Jason Palmental, was new with you this week. And where are you working?
Well, I'm working one block over from where I was the last time I was on the show. We actually moved in December. We bought a house on the other side of the block. It was a very Rhode Island move, but it's a great house. It had a little bit better setup for us to be working from home because that's something that's not going to change, and still have some room for the kids to visit. So that was really nice. And now I'm sitting in an office with a big sliding door out looking, over the backyard. So I've got 2 sleeping dogs in the office and they go in and out all day, and it's just been really nice.
For that move, did you carry stuff around the block, or did a moving van fill up and then drive for 30 seconds and then unload?
It was both. We did hire a moving company because we did not want to try and deal with, all of the boxes and books and furniture.
You're too old for that, frankly.
But right? we are. But it was really funny because they literally loaded up 2 trucks, drove around the block and unloaded them. And so it was 6 hours and everything was done.
6 hours and 1/10 of a mile.
Yes. Yeah. If we got the mileage discount rate, it would have been amazing. but it was really worth it.
And also joining us this week as a first-time guest, Matthieu, what's new with you this week?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, everything is new because it's first time for me on this show. Right now, I'm on the road again. It's been a long time. On my side, I also moved. I changed countries. I was in France 1 week ago. Now I'm in Spain. I traveled, 1,800 kilometers alone in the car under 40 degrees. That was kind of an adventure in Spain, but it was really nice trip. Yeah, that was great. So, and I move all my stuff in the car. So you don't need 2 trucks to move your house, Jason. I can tell you. It depends on how many stuff you have. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really happy also to get back on the road and finally going through that COVID crisis. Things here in Spain are very different. Everything is open, and so I'm glad. I'm happy right now. It's been a tough year, so it's good to get back. Also working on Drupal as every day. I am very, very busy. A lot of work to do here. So yeah, I'm lucky enough. I'm very busy.
Good to hear.
Wonderful. So let's jump into our primary topic, which is discussing some of Matthieu's work. First and foremost, menu manipulator, which is like a great module name. It just makes me wonder, what problem were you trying to solve with that module?
Yeah, I like the name too, but it's not for me actually. It comes from Drupal core. So I faced that issue with Drupal. I will send the link afterward. It's an 8+-year-old issue with Drupal 8. As you know, Drupal 8 is now multilingual in core, but there is that issue with menus item, they are not translated basically. So everyone now have a Drupal 8 website, and you can add languages. But then as soon as you add a menu navigation, like the footer, the main navigation, any menu, it's not translated. So everyone I talk to face the same issue with Drupal 8. As soon as you have a multilingual website, you add a menu and you have all your links in one menu, and it becomes a headache very quickly if you have 2 languages or if you have a very long menu. So I faced that issue. I end up finding so the issue on Drupal.org. It's very, very long issue. It's like 8 years old, and if I remember right, it's like 15 patch and 90 comments. It's like more than 200 people following it, which is kind of a lot of developers following an issue for Drupal issue. So it's a big issue, and there is actually no solution. So I found that issue back in 2018, I think, like 2 years ago, so 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly, but, and there is no official solution so far. There is one patch, like for 1 or 2 months ago, which works but doesn't solve everything.
So
yeah.
When somebody's thinking about using menu manipulator, they get translation on their site, they need to have a better user experience, better setup for the people managing the menus. How does it work? Like what's menu manipulator doing under the hood that Drupal core kind of is missing?
Well, so basically it's very simple. Menu manipulator, I just add a manipulator, which is the name of the things in Drupal core, to filter menu items. So I had a manipulator to filter menu items by languages, by the current languages of the current user. And that's it. So basically you just install the module, you activate it, obviously, you select the menu you want to be filtered. And then everything is filtered out based on your current languages. Under the hood, so it changed a little bit 2 weeks ago. I did some development, but historically the menu had just one main function, which is kind of a little bit ugly, but I had to do all the work in the preprocess menu, basically. So I'm working like Drupal 7 way, really old school way, in a preprocess menu. And this is why I think this issue is very interesting, because it raises, I don't know if those are limitations or things that the Drupal association, the developers, I don't know, I think they were kind of afraid to work on it, but it raised you can see the menu, the menu part of Drupal, kind of old school, yet it's kind of very different from everything that have been done in Drupal 8. Everything is entities and plugin, and you got events and stuff like that. But for menus, there is actually no way for a contrib module to act on a menu item. There is no way to change and edit the way menus are rendered, except redoing everything, like creating your own blocks, or creating or you can do workarounds. Like most of the time, what I used to do is to work with taxonomies instead of menus. So I was able to have translatable entities and to add fields on it. Like, menu items are not fieldable, for instance.
Wait a minute. Yeah. I just have to say.
So
wait. This is the first time in 13 years of developing Drupal that I've even thought of using taxonomy as just the main menu. I don't know why. I mean, really? I've certainly used taxonomies as like secondary or tertiary menus before.
Well, we can do a second show, because for me, like everything can be taxonomies in Drupal, basically. So we can, I always suggest that, and nobody wants to use it, but taxonomies are just great for all lists, actually, all kind of lists.
I have strong feelings about the taxonomy, but getting back to menu manipulator, like I'm seriously like in my head is kind of like having a hard time, or like my brain can't quite figure out, like this whole time I've been building multilingual sites, and it never occurred to me that menu items that were not translated didn't display to people in that language.
So that's the thing. It's the opposite, actually. So maybe I'm not getting that clear. I'm sorry, but basically Drupal assume that if you have menu items and multiple languages, you have to translate it in all languages. Otherwise,
Right.
for instance, you have a menu in English and you have a
No,
Dutch,
you were
in Dutch.
you were clear. I guess I misspoke. I never realized, like, if I had a English menu and like 3 terms in the menu were translated, it never like clicked in my head, I guess, that those other items, if you were looking at it in French, would still show up in English. Like
They will show up in English.
I just always thought that they were translated or they wouldn't show up. I don't know. It just never.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's nice to be able to use this to work in more than one way. But I think so. We ran into this on the Rhode Island web platform stuff, which I'll talk about at some point. But that has multiple languages, and there's sort of like an intent of, we're going to translate this into Spanish, for example, but it's the whole site, and you see whatever has been translated will show as translated, but everything else is still there. So that's just one approach to saying, like, I don't want to not show them content simply because it isn't translated. What was the half measure that the team came up with at the state when we were doing this on the COVID site was they would add, for content that wasn't translated, they would add a translated menu item, and then after that, in parentheses, just put en anglais. So they would like let people know like that there's a translated.
Well,
like
in the US, I guess that works pretty well because people are used to. I mean, many countries, but in France, if things are not in French, you should not show it. That's just the way it is. And many countries do. Like, I mean, you can do that, but obviously it's not good for front end.
I've actually had both scenarios. So like the scenario Jason speaking of, like, hey, just show the English if it's not translated, and then the other, which is like, hide it if it's not translated, and then we'll work on translating it. But it never, I guess it never dawned on me that menu items didn't follow the same rule that, like, Drupal core would follow.
Right. Well, and that's, I mean, you pointed out in France, like that's like that actually gets into legal issues, doesn't it? Like you have to have, like, if you have content in French, like it has to all be there, right? I mean, isn't there? Am I remembering that correctly? Like there's
I'm pretty sure there is some legal side of it, but even for a newspaper, I mean, a news website or anything with content, it's just not convenient. And the way you expect your website to work, it's to, if it's not translated in the language, then it should not show up. But as you say, that's two strategies, content strategies. And as I get deeper into the issue, these two strategies actually, I think, should be a new issue because there is a very hard debate on that. Some people suggest, and I agree with that the issue should not, if we should translate or not, maybe we should integrate an option in Drupal core. Like by default, you can select, I want my translated content to show or not to show, not to show up. But really, this issue is 8 years plus already, and there is already debate around that, and like very little progress. So yeah, it's gonna last for a few years.
Yeah,
maybe
Matthieu, I have another scenario I wanted to ask you about. In a case in a site that I work on, is that we have decided to completely change the menu structure based on language. Does your module support that? So if I'm coming in Spanish, I actually see a different menu structure than I see if I'm in English.
So you have 2 different menus, like one menu per language?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, so this is the main workaround I know people use. If you have 2 languages, you create 2 menus.
Yep.
And basically, menu manipulator, what you can do is you get in the settings and you activate the translation or not for your menus. So if you have a menu in one language, you can even activate the translation. If it's actually, I think it's a great idea because sometimes editors can make a mistake and create a menu in one language in an English menu, and it will show up. So you can activate it safely. It won't have any side effect, as far as I know. So what I try to do is, and maybe we get in that subject afterward, it was kind of my first module too. First time I was contributing in Drupal. And I was a little bit afraid of creating something maybe to, I don't know, with my own point of view, and people were having very different ideas around how to solve that issue. So I tried to create something that have no side effect, and it should work with any kind of structure you have for any. I tried on very small blogs. It's in production on I don't know, maybe 5-6 different websites of mine, of any size, like big website, of a big traffic website, like in Canada with a lot of multi-language content and marketing products, also on very small blogs. So obviously those websites are very different, big companies, small companies, and some are very active, others not. They changed the menu structure too. I know it, because it's like been 3 years ago, and it still works. When I get on website, I can see it still works. So I guess I think you can use it. Actually, I'm very open to suggestions. I'm really glad if you can test it. I can't tell you won't have any issue. It sure works.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, we've certainly had some module developers on the show before, but one thing I like to ask is, what was the process like for you getting it ready for Drupal 9? Because one of the things that kind of stood out to me is you said you had to do it kind of in the Drupal 7 way. You had to use the pre-process hook. And I see that this module is Drupal 8 and 9 compatible. So it sounds like you're saying the menu system didn't really change between 8 and 9.
Well, it actually works. I mean, as far as I know, it's like I get on development, like, as I say, 3 or 1 month ago, to make it Drupal 9 compatible, as a matter of fact. I test it and it works. I close some issues and people also confirm that it works from Drupal 9. So I didn't have the same process as I do on a daily basis when I create Drupal 8 module. Like for this one, it was really different. I was solving a dumb issue, actually, like something not stupid, but kind of very like a missing feature of Drupal core. And I just get into the system module. I look at how menu are manipulated. So that's the name of it. There is actually like a memory, like 2 manipulator. The first one check the access, and the second one create the reorder the menu items, and then you get the menu. So it's very Drupal 7 way, and it just work in Drupal 8 and it just work in Drupal 9 too. So I'm kind of happy. I didn't try to create a plugin implementation or a service, or even try. I tried to create a patch for this system module, but I'm pretty sure it will not work nowadays, like 3 years after Drupal 8 changed so much. So yeah, I'm happy to. I really hesitate to create a country module for that.
So are you going to start a new community working group to replace the menus with the taxonomy system?
well, actually, I mean, I'm open to everything, but I don't know. It's on my side. It was really hard to get some interesting. Interesting is not the right word, but I mean some productive comments back. I had a comment when I did the module, like pretty extensive one. I explained everything. I had some code and documentation, and I was expecting some feedback. And well, it's been 3 years, and the feedbacks are really focused on testing and the implementation and stuff. And I don't find really good feedback from the communities on this issue. So I'm open to create an initiative if someone is interested in that. I don't know who I can reach out. If there is some debate, like some really trying to fix the issue instead of just trying to talk about which is the better technical implementation of it, I'm open. But
so Matthieu, we had you on to talk about 2 modules today.
Yeah,
I think you've actually offered more than 2, but the second one we want to talk about today was the entity media usage module. Could you tell us what that module is about and what kind of problems it's trying to solve?
So this one is the other one, Menu Manipulator, is very simple from my point of view. I mean, it's trying to solve a simple issue, and this one is simpler yet. So the user case was they have a lot of media. They like they have a website with a node and a lot of fields with media attached to it, like a big editorial website. And it's very complicated to work with medias as soon as you have like 10, 20 fields on a page. So they wanted a list of media attached to their page so they can see everything when you have paragraph inside paragraph, and then you have a slideshow in 2 columns, things like that. They were basically tired of expanding each paragraph to see the media. So they wanted the list of attached media. And this
viewing,
is what it's, sorry.
So in viewing the attached media from the content perspective, not like from a general report, but if you're looking at a node, you can see all of the media attached to that particular node.
Yeah, I mean, that was my solution when they asked it to me. I just thought, then we're going to add a tab. As you have the view, edit, delete, and then I add the media tab to nodes with the media view, the view from the core, which was media. So it's user-friendly. And I just contextualize the view to show the media attached to the page. So the only technical complexity was to go through each and every fields which can have medias. And this is a recursive thing because you can have paragraph in paragraphs in paragraphs. So as soon as I did that loop with recursive things, just have to show the list of media.
Does this include embedded media into text?
So it works with a text editor too.
Yep.
Thanks to the markup around it, like the CK editor add the data entity attributes. So that was easy too. And it works with, so that was the first step of the module. And this is the main goal of it, just to show media as attached to nodes. But once I add the code working for medias, then it was really easy to extend it for any entity types, actually. And that was the second use case. They asked me, they said, no, we have media, but let's say, so they were taxonomy terms to keep it short. They have also a lot of taxonomy terms on the same page. So I extend the module, and entity media usage is actually lightweight version of entity usage. When you install it, you have a tab where you can see all references entities attached to entities. So the main use case is you have nodes with medias and maybe nodes with users, for instance, when you have co-authors or I don't know, long list of contributors, things like that. So that's interesting. There are many use cases, and the thing is to see a list of things attached to things. That would be the simpler description of it.
So why did you decide that you needed a more lightweight version of entity usage?
Why? Because I needed to do that quickly, and it needed to be simple from my point of view. It needed I wanted to keep it simple, and the only blocker from entity usage is that it adds a database table, and it keeps track of references, so it saves things in database, and it saves it do some statistic, it do a cron task, and so it does a lot of things. Entity usage does a lot of things, very interesting. But my need was much simpler. I just wanted a list of things attached to a node. I didn't want to overload the database, and I didn't want it to, because on production they already have some issues with performance. And this is just a content editor features. I really don't want to lower the website just to have the list of image. So on one side it's great, the module just works, there is no overload. On the other side, it won't fit a very big website. If you have like thousands of media attached to it, it will load 1,000 media on page load. Obviously, you're going to run into performance issue. So it's very oriented in to be very much simpler than entity usage, which is to track things, like really to track things around your Drupal. I tried to work on entity usage and find a way to bypass everything on installation, like to bypass the tracking things, the statistics. But obviously the module was not built this way, and there is no way to do it. So again, it would have been too much work to try to contribute on it.
Okay.
And that's it. So entity usage. So the name is bad. I should rename it entity usage lights, something like that. I don't know. I need to change the name. But,
so that's actually interesting. I guess I'm still struggling a little bit. So I've used entity usage in the past, and you said that entity usage creates a database table, kind of tracks all of the, all of the usage for different media types. Is your module just tracking usage for media on the node itself?
Yeah,
like, how does it differ in that tracking piece? Like, where's that data being stored?
Actually, I do not store anything.
It's not. There is no tracking.
It's just a display.
Oh,
so when you pull up the node page, it's querying the relationships, displaying them to you.
Is that performant?
But it's only in the admin view, right?
Yeah, it's only on admin. Right? It's for only
so. But this is actually something that would be, I think, really useful in how we're using the media module in this Rhode Island platform that I've been working on, where we're using media items to list files, and they often have to update those files. Mm-hmm. And so, we don't want them to make a new media item. We want to make it easy for them to edit that media item. And currently the UI, when you go into the edit view, it just lets you remove media items and add them. That's sort of the default way that this stuff would work. This would actually give you a quick and easy way to go to the page where that file is listed, go to media usage, and then edit that media item, upload a new PDF, and you're good to go. Yeah. And that actually sounds like that's sort of a perfect add-on to the platform.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good add-on to the media module. Obviously, it needs some love and some work, like to be much more performant. I also use it on some website for completely different things. I have some custom entities with no back office or really no easy way to get to the list of it. You have to go to structure and stuff. When you create custom entities with a Drupal console, for instance. So instead of having to recreate not a full back office, but when you create custom entities, you most of the time have to create links and lists, like list builder. So entity media usage was really helpful for me in this use case too.
Really?
Like for a booking website, or like you have rooms and availabilities and maybe a media too, for instance. You can have the list of the booking and the medias on the same page from the room, for instance.
So does that cut out like 50 of the files you need to create when you create a custom entity then? Like you can just use your module?
Well, but I mean, it's basically on this use case, for instance, I just have the booking entity, room entity, and media. And I can see the booking attached to rooms and the media attached to the rooms too.
So it's giving you visibility into those entity relationships.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually gets infinite. Like for instance, if I can say the booking attached to rooms, for instance, and on bookings, let's say you have media too, with some PDF, for instance, with the invoice, or I don't know, with some PDF attached to the booking, like the flying ticket or any kind of PDF. Yeah. Well, you just get in the room, because that's very easy. When you know your website, you go to your back office content, you get the room, you get the booking, and you get the tickets. So that was one use case, which completely differ from the initial goals when I created that module. But I found it really, really helpful. Be able to list the reference entities. So maybe that's the new name I should come up to, like reference entities or something like that.
That's super interesting. So the main difference, obviously, no database table being created. Some of the other features that you just talked about. Are there any other features of the entity media usage module that are stick out in your head that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. Well, obviously the performance. It's a big issue. Performance is a big issue.
Yeah.
Also, like on the UX side of it.
I have a question on that though. Before you move on from that, when you say performance is a big issue, how is it a big issue on every site, or is it a big issue when you have like 30 paragraphs on a page with 20 media?
It's not an issue at all. Actually, it's not an issue for me, but it's a big issue.
It's a scale issue, right?
Yeah, it's a structural issue. I mean, I know it's an issue, and it's structural. So somehow we have to find a better way.
So it's not an issue on a small. It's not an issue on a small site where, like, hey, you're loading the node page and it only references 2 media items, right? But on a bigger site where that media item references 100 pages or something like that, you go to load the go to load the edit screen. If it's loading that in the background, there's a huge.
Yeah, but it's not an issue at all, because actually, like the basic installation, for instance, with media. And what I do is I just load the ID of the reference entity. Obviously, I won't load the full entities. And then you can display it in the views or in the table. So if you choose table, I basically just load the ID, title, and a link to the reference entity. So there is a structural issue with my module on the performance side, but it just works. And it's not a real world issue. It's not yet, at least.
Well, I think that does sort of get at the question of, what do you feel is better, or I don't know, what does anybody else and here think is better to do these like small one-off modules that just fix that one specific problem that you've got to deal with, versus making it an extension of another module, like an add-on or something like that. And what's your typical approach there? I mean, in terms of like aiming to fix the problem, but also kind of live in the Drupal community at large.
Yeah, well, it's a big question. My strategy now is to create very small things, as much as I can. I'm not a big fan of those modules, for instance, entity usage. I mean, all the popular modules, which are very, very good, and they offer a lot of things, but in the real world, on every project, it just does not fit, and you spend time trying to undo things or hide things. And for me, I'm much more efficient creating small things because I know Drupal 8. I mean, from my point of view, I know it very well now. So I just know how things, I mean, in this use case, I know the thing should work this way. It should not work this module ways, even if it's a popular module. And maybe I don't want the full feature of this module. So Webflow is another example of a very great module, but it's just full of many things and custom entities and things like that. So my approach is to, first thing, trying to see if I can do it in half a day or one day, if I can create something that approach the need, really answer the question. And then most of the time, you need country module. I think when the client asks you, yeah, but I want to be able to edit it next year without your help or without asking any developers to do it. So that's when I move on to create a big module, or trying to have a scalable, not scalable, I mean an agnostic solution. Sorry, I don't know if that's what exists in English anyway. But,
no, it does. It does. Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, I think I'm much more in your camp there. I mean, I agree that I think fixing the specific challenge that you're trying to address in a small and as unobtrusive a way as possible, I think is a great way to go about it.
Well, if you maintain some Drupal website, anyway, you know that it was much simpler every time when you have a website from someone else to get in the code and understand what they wanted to do and fix it, if they just create like small modules from Apple. If there is like a big modules or modules with many things inside, I find it much harder to maintain.
I think that's interesting because I think it depends. Because you had mentioned web form a couple minutes ago. I think if somebody had a form on the page and it was like a custom built form, that was like a contact form or something that web form usually would do, I might be a little bit more, I probably would be looking for web form first.
Yeah.
But then again, if there's a form on the page and web form module is not installed, then it's pretty clear that there's
no, but
custom
you're right. The
that.
form was a very bad example. Yeah, I mean, form maybe it's the exception where because custom form most of the time it's much more complicated than having web form. So I agree with you on that. And then web form was not a good example.
I wonder like sustainability wise though, right? Like I don't know. I'm like a little bit anal retentive when it comes to like a bunch of different code bases and everybody's doing like their own little thing, because I feel like that just makes things more confusing for people that are new to Drupal or people that are trying to find the best solution, right? So like using the web form analogy, like you look at,
we
like,
moved on from that, John.
Oh, we have. Well, I was just going to mention core contact forms.
That's like, next week's show. Contact
forms is, obviously in core. Web forms is like a huge like departure from that if you need that sort of feature set. But like looking at menu manipulator, right? I think like that makes a lot of sense to me because like it's not easy to get a new feature in core like that, right? So it's like, some would say it's almost impossible, but like there's a lot of commenting and thought that has to go into that. So like menu manipulator, like I get that one. Looking at like entity usage though, I'm like, I see the use for it, and I see the fact that like, hey, it works differently. It doesn't bloat your database. It has, it has a little bit of a different feature set. I just wonder, like, is it better to like try to create a submodule or a light submodule on projects as opposed to just kind of like slicing off your own? And like, are you putting a lot of thought into that before you're kind of like rolling your own and like thinking about like, well, can I actually make a submodule here? Or is it like, with usage, it might just be too integrated to do that,
Yeah, no, but you're right. And actually I thought about it, but the thing is, like those modules solving really interesting issue like entity usage and web form, I find it's kind of just too late to try to create some module to that. For instance, on entity usage, it's just impossible for me. It would have been harder as trying to get the core issue solved, trying to change the entity usage module. I mean, I tried, and there is another issue on entity usage module with like a bunch of comments. It's 2-3 years old, so it's possible. But in real life, that was my thinking. Like, it's not possible. So I try. First thing I do is I try to see if I can contribute to the main module. Then it's not possible. So I'm just thinking, should I create a custom module or for that? But actually, I have 10 projects for which this module can be useful. So, I mean, this module can be useful for 10 projects. So, will I keep it for me? Or can I try? Would I try to share with the community, even if I receive aggressive feedback sometime, like saying, you're just reinventing the wheels. These things already works or already exist. But
yeah, I think
that's one of the things the Drupal community is really good at, right? Is jumping on the issue queue and being like, "Hey, don't do this again."
Well, actually, in this case, the guy from Entity Usage came in the issue like 2 days after the publication. He kindly asked, and I kindly answered, and he agreed by saying, "Okay, I mean, I was right, so I'm lucky on this case." Yeah, you agree with me?
That's good.
Yeah,
I think in a perfect world, you would have that kind of situation that, John, that you were laying out where there's just a submodule. But I mean, one of the things to remember is just like Matthieu created that module to serve the purposes of some of his clients, whoever maintains the entity uses module originally probably created it for their client as well, right? And so going in wholesale, like making the database portion able to be shut off, first of all, would be a huge undertaking because that's an underlying assumption of the module, but also you're now risking breaking how it works for the people that are using it and for his, the clients that he originally built it for.
Well, it just makes me wonder, like, if there's and this is probably like going down the rabbit hole here, but like if there's a different way that we should be thinking about module development, in the fact where like the main module should be like really broad feature set, and then like maybe we have like an advanced version and a light version of the modules to be able to kind of split those out, but
I think that's a natural evolution of things, but I think it starts by this sort of approach, because I don't think you can go backwards. Make
Sure.
like going ahead to like make a submodule to make the big module simpler. I don't know. I mean, I think one small, really complete module that requires minimal updates and is well documented and does the thing and only the thing that you need out of it. I'd rather have 50 of those installed, knowing that they're going to be pretty stable and each one is doing exactly what it needs to do, rather than installing the thing that you don't know.
Right.
And
isn't that often what we do ourselves as developers though too? We create our own custom modules for our projects that do these little tiny things to tweak this thing. And then someone like Matthieu comes along and thinks about the little bit bigger picture, right? It says, I need to do this little tweak thing, but I'm going to do it in a broader sense and make it available to everyone.
Right.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think that is, what we see there is the equivalent of all of the public repos of things that people do to make their 11D sites build faster, or name any open source project. And I think that this is really healthy, because one of the things that is so difficult in any one of these environments of open source projects is evaluating the quality of the work that you want to include in your project. And a small module that is, I hope, clearly documented is a lot easier for you to vet and say, okay, this does exactly the thing that I needed to do. It's not, 50 screens of stuff that's not doing what you need to get that one little feature. And I think ultimately that's easier for people to get their head around and include and feel good about, incorporating into a larger project or platform.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, but I don't really have opinion on it. It's just my way of doing the things now, like after years and years of doing the same custom module and knowing which country module I may use, but I will have to redo things. I'm just going this way now. I decided like 2 or 3 years ago, I create the same module I created 10 times, but this time I'm going to contribute it. So this way I reach out to you with maybe a list of modules. I had a few modules, because this is what I'm starting to do, trying to contribute each and every module I use for the use case I encounter, countless time. Like clients always ask the same things. Anyway, they just have different vocabularies, but everybody has the same thing most of the time, obviously. So everybody needs Node and media. Sorry, go.
No, let's jump into that a little bit. So like, first time contribution, and like you're trying to contribute back to the community. I mean, you've created a bunch of other modules, right? User info block, Twitter API block, flag rating module. I'm curious, what's it like, being a first time contributor, and, do you have advice for people that are kind of building these smaller modules and maybe like, well, maybe this is useful, maybe it's not. How do you, what's your advice for them to kind of get started on, giving back to the community like this?
Well, first of all, I don't know what you say, but I guess I'm very shy facing the community. Like, I don't consider I know I'm a senior developer in Drupal now because I got years of experience, but every day is a challenge when I open VS Code. So I also feel really shy when I try to contribute things. So it's not really an advice, but I guess I will push as many developers as I can find to try to contribute something. Anyway, if it's not good, the module will disappear, and that's it. And do not feel any shame. Even if the code is ugly, the only thing that can happen is nobody use your module. I mean, it just overload the Drupal Git. So my first advice would be just to try out, because as I say, I spend a lot of hours of work redoing the same thing. So for you name some module, for instance, user block info. I'm not proud of it, but that was my first module, Drupal 8 module, and I was really proud of it at the time. And nobody used it, but I'm really happy it's there. And then I ended up with the Twitter API module, which I think I'm kind of proud of it, but nobody uses it yet. And my advice would be, just the first advice, do not be ashamed of anything and just try to publish and try to keep things really small and efficient. Like those modules, even if I'm not proud of it or if I'm proud of it, they all solve one specific issues, and I know it works where I use it. So I still think it was predictive.
I have a question for you. You mentioned that you built the user info block module. You're proud of it at the time, but no one uses it. And then you mentioned the Twitter API module, and you said you are proud of it, and also said no one uses it. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts from a contributor perspective as a developer, how you could get your modules more visible in the Drupal community. I guess one way is the one you did today, which is you reached out to us and you asked if you could join the show. So that's one way. Do you have any other thoughts about this problem and how to solve it?
I have an issue with the coordination of communities. Actually, the best way would be to have a promotion of good modules. I don't mean my module is good, but I mean, for instance, entity usage menu manipulator solves real world issue, and hundreds of developers have that issue. So as soon as maybe 10, 20 people try it and they confirm that it solved the issue, there should be a channel somewhere on Drupal.org that we can be able to promote that issue. To promote the module, saying with an explanation, obviously, and a use case and a demo site. I think we are missing demo sites where people can just log in and try and click around and see the setting page of things, and dedicated channels to promote things to communities. Because the best way, to convince people to try your module, from my point of view, is during Drupal Camp and Meetup, or your shows, for instance. Those are the places. I'm in the Drupal Slack and in Drupal France, Drupal Spain, for instance. I just speak those 3 languages. And even if I try, I send links and I invite people to test my modules. Nobody does, because people try your module when they have
they need it.
Same,
yeah.
when they need it, and when they know you and they heard about it.
Right.
So yeah, I think one way of improving things would have a dedicated channel, and I'm not a communication professional, so I don't know how it can work, but I would be happy to have a channel in Slack and receive a big notification with an image of the issue and the image of the plugin and a link to test it. Like at the end of the day, when I have a headache working too much in Drupal, I can go and click around and try to break things with other people modules. That would be a funny experience too. But yeah. Or the other thing is trying to reach you. For instance, Talking Drupal is not very famous here, at least where it's in English. So that was not my native communities, for instance. So I participate in Drupal Camp, but I guess this is also my character. I'm okay to open to communities and speak, even if I don't speak very fluently. Anyway, I'm happy to do that, but I know many developers who are much more shy or really not confident in them, and they are much better than me. And
are there Drupal podcasts and shows that are available in French?
Shows and podcasts. No, we're like the main thing we have is I would say 3-5 really good developers publishing content on a regular basis. Really good content, but most of the time it's tutorial. We don't have a famous podcast. As long as I know. I don't remember your exact question. I'm sorry, but I guess it answers what you asked.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
So I have one final quick question for you before we start to close out the show. It's something I've noticed on a couple of modules, and I noticed it on the two that we talked about today. So, for example, the menu manipulator module, the recommended version shows that it's Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 compatible, but the entity media usage module does not. I mean, the entity media usage module is Drupal 9 compatible.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why it doesn't say it on the recommended?
That's my fault, I guess. That's on me.
Because I've been seeing that with a bunch of modules where they don't show that the Drupal 9 compatible. You check the info and they are.
Well, but for it to be shown on the module, you have to add a new line in the info.yaml in the YAML file. There is a new line to say that it's Drupal 9 compatible. I didn't do it for entity media usage actually.
Okay,
so
I can open it.
You can open it.
No, but you have the core version requirement in there.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so that's why I was asking, because your module is Drupal 9 compatible. It has core version requirement 8 or 9. Maybe because it has core 8.x as well.
Yeah, that's not okay. So I don't know,
because I'm curious.
Sorry?
The reason why I'm asking is because if I can find out exactly why that's, maybe I can ask Tim, because I'm sure he'll know. If I can figure that out, I could just open patches to fix that. Because I just recently started moving a site to Drupal 9, and there were probably 15 modules that this upgrade status said weren't ready for Drupal 9, and they all were compatible. And the module page doesn't say that they are, but they all were.
It's supposed to be this new line in the info.yaml, basically. Well, as far as I know, so I'm thinking maybe the version number of my release, maybe that's it. Maybe I didn't create a new release because the release pattern changed now. It's a new one. You don't have to prefix it with the 8.x. It changes.
I think it's because the core value is in that info file, because core 8x isn't supposed to be in there anymore. So I wonder if that's preventing it from processing it properly.
We're solving problems live on.
Put an issue in, Nick. Test it out. See what happens. This is open source, man. You can contribute.
Like I said, once I know, I can. Yeah. So looking at the menu manipulator, it has a core version requirement, but not core 8.x. So that's probably it. I'll open a patch for you, and we can figure that out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I like patch.
So if you have questions or feedback, or if you'd like to make a comment about our 300th episode, you could reach out to us on Talking Drupal, Twitter @Talking Drupal. You can also hit us up on the Drupal Slack channel hashtag Talking Drupal, and you can always email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. I think I've covered all of them. You can also get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
You can also promote your Drupal camp on Talking Drupal. You can learn more about that at talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support's greatly appreciated. And you can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing that big button that says Become a Patron.
And we'd like to once again thank you, Matthieu, for joining us, reaching out. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to mention to our listeners before we sign off?
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm really glad about the show, and keep up the good work. Thank you for your contributions too.
Thank you. And if our listeners had any questions for you or wanted to reach out, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I have the contact forum on the Drupal.org. If they can find me, otherwise just type Matthieu Scarset on Google and you'll find my contact.
Perfect. And Jason, where can our listeners reach out to you?
You can see web font related stuff at rwt.io or Jay Pomentel on pretty much any social network. Instagram for the dogs and Twitter for all of my blathering about fonts.
And Stephen, how about you?
It's very simple. StephenCross.com. That's with a PH.
And how about you, John?
Find out about me at John Picozzi on all the major social networks. And you can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com.
You can reach me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
See you guys.
See you guys next
Have
week.
a good one.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
man.
me.